The sight of Patricia Calloway hauling a full-grown steer across her father's ranch with nothing but her own 2 arms and a rope made most men in Lincoln County, New Mexico territory, uncomfortable. But it made Marcus Northfield stop his horse and stare in admiration. It was the summer of 1878, and the dust from recent range wars still settled over the landscape, while cattle barons carved their empires from the unforgiving land. Patricia had heard the whispers all her life. At 22 years old, she stood 5 feet 10 inches tall with shoulders broad enough to carry fence posts without breaking stride. Her hands bore calluses that would shame many ranch hands, and her arms showed muscle definition that made the ladies at Sunday service clutch their pearls and whisper behind gloved hands. Her mother had died when she was 12, leaving her to help her aging father run their modest spread just outside the boundaries of John Chisholm's massive ranch operation. While other girls learned embroidery and piano, Patricia learned to break horses, mend fences, and deliver calves in the middle of storms. "That girl is built like a working animal," Mrs. Henderson had said just last week at the general store, not bothering to lower her voice. "No man wants a wife who looks like she could wrestle him to the ground." Patricia had kept her head high and continued selecting her supplies, even as her face burned with humiliation. She had stopped hoping for marriage years ago. At an age when most women had already been wives and mothers for several years, she remained alone, helping her father and watching other women her age pushing prams down the dusty streets of Lincoln. Marcus Northfield had arrived in New Mexico territory 3 weeks earlier with $2,000 in his pocket, a dream of owning his own ranch, and a practical understanding that success in this country required hard work and harder decisions. At 26, he had spent 8 years working cattle drives from Texas to Kansas, saving every penny he could spare. He had seen men die from stampedes, drought, and despair. He had also seen which ranches thrived and which failed, and he knew the difference always came down to the quality of work and the dedication of those doing it. He had been riding the boundaries of a property he was considering purchasing when he spotted Patricia wrestling that steer. The animal had somehow gotten tangled in old wire fencing, and rather than wait for help, she had simply grabbed hold and was methodically working to free it while keeping it calm with a steady stream of soft words. Her brown hair had come loose from its braid and hung in sweaty strands around her face. Her simple cotton dress was already torn at the shoulder from where the steer had thrashed. But what caught Marcus's attention was the competent efficiency of her movements and the gentle way she handled the frightened animal. "Easy now, you stubborn fool," Patricia murmured to the steer, finally freeing its hind leg from the last tangle of wire. "There you go. That is better, is it not?" The steer scrambled to its feet and trotted off, apparently none the worse for wear. Patricia stood there breathing hard, wiping sweat from her forehead with the back of her arm, leaving a streak of dirt across her face. "That was impressive," Marcus called out, walking his horse closer. Patricia spun around, clearly startled. Her hand went instinctively to the small knife she kept at her belt, then relaxed when she saw it was just a lone cowboy. "I did not hear you ride up. I apologize for startling you. I am Marcus Northfield. I am looking at the old Reynolds property with an eye toward buying it." He dismounted and extended his hand. Patricia hesitated, then shook it firmly. Her grip was strong and sure. "Patricia Calloway. My father and I run the property to the east. Welcome to the territory, Mr. Northfield." "Marcus, please." He glanced at the torn fencing. "You do all your own ranch work." She bristled slightly, recognizing the judgment she had heard so many times before. "My father is 67 years old and recovering from a broken leg, Someone has to do it. I meant no offense, Marcus said quickly. I was thinking that you probably know this land better than anyone. I would be grateful for your thoughts on the Reynolds place if you have time to share them. Patricia studied him carefully. He had an honest face, tanned from years of outdoor work, with brown eyes that met hers directly. He stood a few inches taller than her, which was unusual enough to be noteworthy. Most importantly, he had not looked at her with either pity or disgust when discussing ranch work. The land is good, she said carefully. Water rights are solid and the grazing is decent if you manage it properly. The house needs work and the fences are in poor condition, as you can see from this mess. But old man Reynolds ran a good operation until his health failed. You could do worse. Would you show me the water sources? I would pay for your time, of course, Patricia considered. Her father would not need her for a few hours and they could use the extra money. $5. Fair enough. She collected her horse from where she had ground tied it nearby and led Marcus across the rolling grassland that characterized this part of New Mexico territory. As they rode, she pointed out springs, seasonal creek beds, and the areas that tended to flood during the late summer monsoons. Marcus listened carefully, asking intelligent questions that showed he understood ranching. You have done this work before, Patricia observed. 8 years on the trail and working various spreads, but always for someone else. I want my own place. I want to build something that lasts. He paused. What about you? Will you and your father keep your ranch going, as long as we can? Patricia's voice was tight. Though people in town think I should sell out and move somewhere back east where a woman my age might still find a husband willing to overlook her. Unfeminine qualities. Marcus looked genuinely surprised. Unfeminine? Who said that? Most everyone. Patricia kept her eyes on the horizon. I am too tall, too strong, too capable with ranch work. Apparently men find it threatening. Then they are fools, Marcus said bluntly. In this country, you need a partner who can pull their weight. A woman who can handle ranch work is worth her weight in gold. My mother could shoot as well as any man and helped my father build their farm in Missouri from nothing. She was the strongest person I ever knew, and my father told anyone who would listen that she was perfect for farm life. He loved her for exactly who she was. Patricia felt something catch in her throat. She had not expected such words from a stranger. That is a rare attitude. Maybe. But it is an honest one. Marcus pointed to a stand of cottonwoods ahead. Is that one of the springs? They spent the next 2 hours riding the property. Patricia showed him everything, answering his questions with the detailed knowledge that came from a lifetime on adjacent land. When they finally returned to where they had started, the sun was beginning its descent toward the western mountains. Marcus paid her the $5 as promised, then hesitated. Would you and your father be willing to join me for dinner at the hotel in Lincoln tomorrow evening? I would appreciate more of your insights about ranching in this area, and I would like to meet your father. Patricia felt a flutter of something she had not experienced in years, something that might have been hope. I will ask him. If his leg is up to the journey, we will be there. 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock, she agreed. As Patricia rode home, she found herself thinking about Marcus Northfield's words, perfect for ranch life. No one had ever described her that way. She had been called mannish, unsuitable, unfortunate, but perfect. That was entirely new. Her father, Douglas Calloway, was sitting on the porch when she arrived, his splinted leg propped on a stool. He was a lean man with silver hair and sharp blue eyes that missed nothing. You were gone longer than expected. I helped a man survey the Reynolds property. He paid me $5 for my time. Patricia handed him the coins. Douglas's eyebrows rose. Did he now? What man? Marcus Northfield. He is looking to buy the Reynolds place and start his own ranch. He asked if we would join him for dinner tomorrow evening at the hotel in Lincoln. Both of us. Douglas studied his daughter's face. And you want to go? Patricia busied herself unsaddling her horse. He seems knowledgeable about ranching. It might be good to have a neighbor who knows what he is doing. Patricia, look at me. When she turned, her father's expression was gentle. What did he say to you? He called me perfect for ranch life. The words came out softer than she intended. Douglas smiled, the wrinkles around his eyes deepening. Then he has more sense than most men in this territory. Yes, we will go to dinner. I want to meet this Marcus Northfield. The next evening, Patricia stood in front of her small mirror, trying to tame her unruly hair. She had only 2 good dresses, both simple cotton day dresses that were suitable for church but hardly elegant. She chose the blue one because it was newer and had fewer patches. Her hands, scrubbed as clean as she could get them, still showed the evidence of hard work. There was a healing blister on her palm from fence mending, and her nails were short and practical. You look lovely, her father said from the doorway. He was dressed in his best suit, looking distinguished despite the awkwardness of his splinted leg. I look like exactly what I am, Patricia replied, but I suppose there is no point in pretending otherwise. The ride to Lincoln took 40 minutes in their wagon. Patricia helped her father down and they made their way into the hotel restaurant. Marcus was already there, standing when he saw them approach. He had cleaned up considerably, his hair neatly combed and his shirt pressed. But Patricia noticed his hands showed the same kind of work-worn appearance as her own. Mr. Calloway, thank you for coming. I am Marcus Northfield. The 2 men shook hands while Marcus assessed the older man with the same careful attention he had given the land. My daughter tells me you are planning to buy the Reynolds place, if the price is right. I made an offer this afternoon. The widow Reynolds seems motivated to sell, so I should know within a few days. Marcus held Patricia's chair for her, a courtesy that made her blush slightly. Dinner was a pleasant affair. Douglas and Marcus discussed cattle breeds, water management, and the ongoing tensions between small ranchers and the larger operations like John Chisholm's sprawling empire. Patricia contributed her own observations, and Marcus listened to her with the same attention he gave her father. He never dismissed her opinions or looked surprised when she demonstrated detailed knowledge of ranching economics. The Chisholm Ranch has been buying up water rights, Patricia said. Small operators like us have to be careful to protect our access. I noticed the Reynolds property has 2 good springs that originate on the land itself, Marcus said. That was one of the main attractions. Smart, Douglas approved. Water is everything out here. Patricia, remember when the Johnson place lost their water rights in that court case? They had to sell within 6 months, Patricia confirmed. Could not run cattle without reliable water. As the evening progressed, Patricia found herself relaxing. Marcus was easy to talk to, and he seemed genuinely interested in what she had to say. When he asked about her experiences breaking horses, she told him about the particularly stubborn mare she had trained the previous summer, and he laughed at her description of the horse's various tricks to avoid work. You have a gift for it, Marcus said. Not everyone can train a horse without breaking its spirit. My mother taught me, Patricia said. She always said a broken horse was only half as useful as a trained one. Your mother sounds like she was a wise woman. She was. Patricia's voice softened. I wish she had lived to see the ranch now. She and my father built it from nothing. Just like you are maintaining it, Marcus said. That takes just as much courage as starting something new. After dinner, Marcus walked them to their wagon. Thank you both for your time and your insights. I have learned more about this area in one evening with you than I could have in a month on my own. "If you do buy the Reynolds place, you will be our nearest neighbor," Douglas said. "We believe in being neighborly out here." "I appreciate that, sir." Marcus turned to Patricia. "Miss Calloway, I wonder if I might call on you again. I would value your advice as I get the ranch started, and I find your company quite enjoyable." Patricia felt her heart skip. She was acutely aware of her father watching, of the other diners who might overhear, of all the times she had been rejected or dismissed. But Marcus was looking at her with what appeared to be genuine interest and respect. "I would like that," she said. "Wonderful. I will ride over once I have news about the property." True to his word, Marcus appeared at the Calloway Ranch 3 days later. His offer had been accepted, and he was now the owner of 2,000 acres of New Mexico grassland, complete with a run-down house, dilapidated fences, and 100 head of cattle that came with the sale. "Congratulations," Patricia said, meaning it. "When will you move in?" "Tomorrow." "I wanted to ask if you might be willing to help me assess what needs to be done first. I will pay your usual rate." Over the following weeks, Marcus became a regular presence at the Calloway Ranch, and Patricia became equally regular at his. She helped him prioritize repairs, showed him which local suppliers were honest, and even assisted with some of the heavier work that he could not manage alone. In return, Marcus helped with tasks around the Calloway place that had been neglected during Douglas's recovery. The arrangement was practical and mutually beneficial. It was also becoming something more, though neither of them spoke of it directly. One afternoon in late August, they were working together to repair a section of Marcus's fence line. The heat was oppressive, and thunderheads were building to the south, promising one of the violent late summer storms that characterized the season. Patricia was digging post holes while Marcus set the posts, a rhythm they had developed over several similar projects. "You are better at this than most men I have worked with," Marcus observed, tamping dirt around a post. "Is that a compliment or an observation?" Patricia asked, wiping sweat from her face. "Both." Marcus paused in his work. "Patricia, I need to say something, and I hope you will not take offense." She straightened, suddenly wary. "Go ahead." "I have heard what people in town say about you, about how you are too strong, too capable, too much of everything that is supposedly unwomanly." His voice was tight with anger on her behalf. "It is absolute nonsense. You are one of the most remarkable people I have ever met. The fact that you can work a ranch does not make you less feminine. It makes you competent and strong and exactly the kind of person this land requires." Patricia felt tears prick her eyes and blinked them away furiously. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I think you have been made to feel ashamed of who you are, and that is wrong." Marcus set down his tamping bar and moved closer. "Because in the weeks I have known you, I have come to admire you more than I can say. And because I am falling in love with you, and I want you to know that I love you exactly as you are." The thunder rumbled closer, but Patricia barely heard it. "You are falling in love with me." "I am. I know we have not known each other long, but I have never met anyone like you. You are strong and kind and capable and beautiful. When I imagine my future on this ranch, I cannot imagine it without you there beside me." "People will talk," Patricia said, but her voice was unsteady. "They will say you settled for the woman no one else wanted. Then they will be fools, and I will not care what fools think." Marcus took her hands in his. "I am not settling. I am hoping to be lucky enough that you might feel something for me too." Patricia looked down at their joined hands, his as calloused and work-worn as her own. She thought of all the years she had been told she was wrong, unsuitable, too much. And here was a man who saw all of that and called it perfect. "I do feel something for you," she admitted. "I have been afraid to hope, but yes, Marcus, I feel the same way." He smiled, and it transformed his whole face. Then may I court you properly, with your father's permission, of course. You have spent more time with my father in the past month than most people do in a year. I think he would be pleased." The storm broke then, rain suddenly pouring from the sky in sheets. They ran for the shelter of Marcus's barn, laughing as they got soaked through. Inside, breathless and dripping, they stood looking at each other in the dim light. "I must look a mess," Patricia said, suddenly self-conscious. "You look perfect," Marcus replied and kissed her. It was not Patricia's first kiss, but it was the first one that felt right. His arms around her were strong but gentle, and she felt both safe and exhilarated at once. When they finally broke apart, she was smiling more genuinely than she had in years. "I should get home before my father worries," she said reluctantly. "I will ride with you. This storm is not letting up anytime soon." That evening, with both of them still damp despite their rain slickers, Marcus formally asked Douglas Calloway for permission to court his daughter. Douglas, who had been watching the growing attachment with approval, gave his blessing readily. "She is a treasure, Mr. Northfield." "I hope you know that." "I do, sir, and I promise to spend the rest of my life making sure she knows it too." The courtship that followed was unconventional by most standards. While other courting couples took sedate walks and sat in parlors under watchful eyes, Marcus and Patricia spent their time working side by side on their ranches. They repaired fences together, moved cattle, and broke horses. They also took long rides through the countryside, talking about their dreams and plans for the future. Marcus learned that Patricia wanted to expand into horse breeding, something her father had never had the capital to pursue. Patricia learned that Marcus had a younger sister back in Missouri, who he hoped might join him once he was more established. They discovered they both loved thunderstorms, preferred coffee to tea, and had a tendency to talk to their horses as if the animals understood every word. They also faced the inevitable gossip. When they appeared together at church or in town, people stared and whispered. Patricia overheard Mrs. Henderson tell another woman that Marcus must be desperate to court that mannish Calloway girl. "Pay them no mind," Marcus said when Patricia reported the comment, her cheeks burning with humiliation and anger. "They are small-minded people leading small lives. We have better things to do." But Patricia knew it bothered him more than he let on. She caught him glaring at a group of men who made a rude comment when Patricia lifted a heavy saddle. That evening, Marcus made a point of loudly praising Patricia's strength and capability to anyone who would listen. "She can outwork most men I have known," he declared at the general store. "I consider myself fortunate that she tolerates my company." 3 months into their courtship, Marcus proposed. It was not a dramatic affair with a ring produced on bended knee. Instead, they were sitting on the porch of the Calloway ranch watching the sun set over the mountains, tired after a long day of moving cattle to fresh pasture. "Marry me," Marcus said suddenly. Patricia turned to look at him. "What? Marry me, Patricia?" "I know it has not been long, but I know my own mind. I love you. I want to build a life with you. I want to combine our ranches and create something lasting together. I want to wake up next to you every morning and work beside you every day." He took her hand. "I know I should have a ring and make a proper speech, but I cannot wait any longer to ask. Will you marry me?" Patricia felt joy bubbling up inside her, bright and unexpected. "Yes. Yes, I will marry you." Marcus whooped and pulled her into his arms, kissing her soundly. Douglas appeared in the doorway, took one look at their faces, and started laughing. "I suppose I should start planning a wedding," he said. They married 6 weeks later in the small church in Lincoln. It was a simple ceremony with only a few dozen guests, mostly neighboring ranchers and a few of Douglas's old friends. Patricia wore her mother's wedding dress, carefully preserved and altered to fit her taller frame. Marcus wore his best suit and could not stop smiling. Mrs. Henderson attended, likely more out of nosiness than goodwill, and was heard commenting that the bride looked handsome enough, though a bit large for a proper bride. Marcus's sister, Sarah, who had arrived from Missouri 2 weeks earlier, overheard and loudly declared that Patricia was the most beautiful bride she had ever seen. Sarah was 19, spirited, and had taken to Patricia immediately. "I always wanted a sister," Sarah had told Patricia when they first met. "And Marcus has written so much about you that I feel I know you already. He said you were perfect for ranch life, and he was right." After the ceremony, there was a simple reception at the hotel. Patricia danced with her new husband, with her father, and with several of the neighboring ranchers who had known her all her life. When she was briefly alone, catching her breath, Mr. Chen, who ran the general store, approached her. "Your mother would be proud," he said simply. "You have her strength and her heart." "Thank you, Mr. Chen. That means more than you know." Marcus had prepared the house on his ranch for their arrival. He had spent weeks cleaning, repairing, and making it as comfortable as he could. It was not fancy, but it was solid and clean, with new curtains Sarah had sewn and a quilt Patricia recognized as coming from her own mother's hope chest, a gift from Douglas. "Welcome home, Mrs. Northfield," Marcus said, carrying her over the threshold. "It feels right," Patricia said, looking around. "It feels like where I am supposed to be." That first night as husband and wife, they talked about their plans. Douglas would continue to live on the Calloway ranch, which was now officially combined with Marcus's property. They would run the operations as one large spread, with Sarah helping Douglas manage the day-to-day tasks there, while Marcus and Patricia focused on the main ranch house and the horse breeding operation Patricia had always dreamed of. "We will need to build proper stables," Patricia said, already planning. "And we should start looking for good breeding stock." "Whatever you need," Marcus promised. "This is your dream as much as mine." The early months of their marriage were busy and happy. They worked together every day, building their ranch into something they could both be proud of. Patricia proved to have an exceptional eye for horses, and the breeding program she started quickly gained a reputation for quality. Marcus handled the cattle operation and the business side of things, while Patricia managed the horses and much of the day-to-day ranch work. They faced challenges, of course. A dry spell that winter had them worried about water and feed. A bout of illness swept through the cattle, and they lost a dozen head before it passed. Sarah proved to be more homesick than she had anticipated and struggled with the isolation of ranch life. "I miss Missouri," she confessed to Patricia one evening. "I miss my friends and the town socials." "This life is not for everyone," Patricia said gently. "If you want to return, no one would think less of you." But Sarah stuck it out, and gradually she adjusted. She proved to have a gift for managing the household and the ranch accounts, taking on responsibilities that freed Marcus and Patricia to focus on the outdoor work they both loved. She also struck up a friendship with the local schoolteacher, a young man named Thomas Wright, and by spring she was blushing whenever his name was mentioned. "I think my sister is smitten," Marcus observed one evening. "I think Thomas is equally smitten," Patricia replied. They would make a good match. As their first anniversary approached, Patricia had news to share. She waited until they were alone one evening, sitting on their porch and watching the stars emerge. "Marcus, I am going to have a baby." He turned to her, his face showing shock and then pure joy. "Truly, truly. Probably late September or early October." Marcus pulled her close, his hand resting gently on her still flat stomach. "A baby, our baby. Patricia, I could not be happier. I was worried," she admitted, "about whether I would be any good at motherhood." It is so different from the work I know. You will be wonderful. You are strong and capable and loving. Our child will be lucky to have you as a mother." Douglas was delighted by the news, and Sarah immediately began planning and preparing. The nursery was set up in the spare room, and Sarah sewed tiny clothes while Patricia continued to work on the ranch, adapting her tasks as her pregnancy progressed. The gossips in town had a field day when Patricia continued to ride horses and work cattle well into her 6th month. "It is unseemly," Mrs. Henderson declared. "A woman in her condition should be resting." But Patricia felt strong and saw no reason to stop doing what she loved. She was careful, of course, and Marcus worried constantly, but her pregnancy was healthy and uncomplicated. When she finally did slow down in her 7th month, it was more because she could no longer fit comfortably in the saddle than because of any weakness. "I miss the work," she confessed to Marcus. "It will be there when you are ready," he assured her. "Right now, you are doing the most important work there is." Their son was born on a cool October evening in 1879, delivered by the doctor from Lincoln with Sarah and Douglas both helping. He was a healthy baby with strong lungs and his father's brown eyes. They named him Douglas Marcus Northfield after both grandfathers. Marcus held his son with a mixture of awe and terror. "He is so small. He will grow," Patricia said, exhausted but happy. "And you will teach him to be a good man just like you are." Patricia took to motherhood with the same determination she brought to everything else. She nursed the baby herself, ignoring the suggestion that they hire a wet nurse. She wore him in a sling while doing light chores, and as he grew, she included him in the daily rhythms of ranch life. "That baby spends more time outdoors than in," Mrs. Henderson sniffed when Patricia brought young Douglas to town at 6 months old. "Fresh air is good for him," Patricia replied calmly. She had learned to ignore most of what Mrs. Henderson said. Sarah married Thomas Wright that spring, in a wedding that was considerably larger than Marcus and Patricia's had been. The young couple moved to a small house in Lincoln, where Thomas taught school and Sarah took in sewing. But she visited the ranch often, doting on her nephew and helping Patricia with the work when she could. As Douglas grew from baby to toddler, he showed signs of having inherited his mother's love of animals and his father's steady temperament. By the time he was 2, he was already helping with the horses, which mostly meant getting in the way while Patricia worked, but doing so with such enthusiasm that no one minded. Patricia and Marcus's ranch continued to prosper. The horse breeding program became well known throughout New Mexico territory, and they were able to expand their cattle operation. They bought the adjacent property when it came up for sale, increasing their holdings significantly. Douglas Calloway, now 72, officially retired and spent his days teaching his grandson the skills he had taught his daughter years before. "He is a natural," Douglas told Patricia, watching young Douglas toddle after the barn cats. "Just like you were." In the summer of 1883, Patricia discovered she was pregnant again. This pregnancy was harder than the first, and she was sick for the first few months. Marcus insisted she rest more, and for once Patricia did not argue. At 32, she was no longer the inexhaustible young woman she had been, and she recognized her limits. Their daughter was born in February of 1884, arriving a few weeks early but healthy and strong. They named her Clara Rose, after Patricia's mother and Marcus's mother, respectively. She had her mother's dark hair and her father's smile, and young Douglas was immediately smitten with his baby sister. "I will protect her," the 4-year-old declared solemnly. "I know you will," Marcus said, ruffling his son's hair. With 2 young children, Patricia had to further adjust her work on the ranch. She still managed the horse breeding program, but Marcus took on more of the daily physical labor. They hired additional ranch hands to help, and the operation continued to grow. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. The ranch prospered, the children grew, and Marcus and Patricia's love for each other only deepened with time. They still worked side by side when they could, and on quiet evenings they would sit together on their porch, watching the sun set over the mountains and talking about their day. "Do you ever regret it?" Patricia asked one such evening when Douglas was 6 and Clara was 2. Marrying someone so unsuitable, Marcus turned to her in surprise. "Unsuitable? Where did that come from, Mrs.?" Henderson was at church today, going on about how unfortunate it is that Clara is being raised by a mother who is more comfortable in the barn than the parlor. "Mrs. Henderson is an old busybody who should mind her own business," Marcus said firmly. He took Patricia's hand. "You are the best mother our children could have. You are teaching them to be strong and capable and kind. You are showing Clara that women can be anything they choose to be, and you are showing Douglas how to respect and value women. I could not ask for a better partner in any aspect of my life." "I love you," Patricia said simply. "I love you too, and I thank God every day that I was smart enough to see you for who you really are, perfect for ranch life, perfect for me, just perfect." The years continued to pass. Douglas grew into a tall, serious boy who loved the ranch as much as his parents did. Clara was more spirited, quick to laugh and fearless in a way that reminded Marcus of his sister. The ranch continued to expand and prosper, becoming one of the most successful operations in the region. In 1887, Douglas Calloway passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 76. He had lived to see his grandson become a confident 9-year-old ranch hand in training, and his granddaughter grow into a bright, curious 3-year-old. His death was mourned by everyone who knew him, but there was comfort in knowing he had lived a full life and died surrounded by family. "He was so proud of you," Marcus told Patricia as they stood by the grave. "He told me once that you had exceeded every hope he ever had for you." "He taught me everything," Patricia said, tears streaming down her face. "I would not be who I am without him." They named the ranch the Calloway Northfield Ranch in his honor, a recognition of the legacy he and Patricia's mother had built and that Marcus and Patricia were continuing. Sarah and Thomas had 3 children of their own by then, and the cousins played together often. Sarah had never quite taken to ranch life herself, but she loved visiting and watching her children enjoy the freedom of the wide open spaces. "I still do not understand how you do it," Sarah told Patricia one afternoon, watching her manage a difficult horse with calm efficiency. "You make it look so easy." "Years of practice," Patricia replied, "and I love it. That makes all the difference." When Douglas Jr. was 12, he asked if he could start breaking horses under his mother's supervision. Patricia agreed, and they spent long hours together in the training corral. Clara, at 8, declared that she wanted to learn too, and soon both children were working alongside their mother. "They are naturals," Marcus observed proudly, "just like their mother." "They are still young," Patricia cautioned. "They may decide they want different lives." But as the years passed, it became clear that both children had inherited their parents' love for the ranch. Douglas had his mother's patience with horses and his father's head for business. Clara had her grandfather's sharp eye for cattle and her mother's determination. In 1892, when Patricia was 41 and Marcus was 45, they sat down with their children to discuss the future of the ranch. "This place will be yours someday," Marcus said. "We want to make sure you both understand what that means." "It means hard work," Douglas said. At 17, he was already taller than his father and had the solid build of a working rancher. "It means being responsible for the land and the animals and the people who depend on us." "It means carrying on what you and grandfather started," Clara added, At 13, she was already showing signs of her mother's height and strength. It means being good stewards of what we have been given. Patricia felt her heart swell with pride. You both understand. That is good. The ranch continued to thrive into the new decade. New Mexico was moving toward statehood, and the wild frontier of their youth was gradually becoming more settled and civilized. The range wars and violence that had characterized the early years were largely over, replaced by legal disputes and economic competition. Marcus and Patricia adapted to the changing times. They invested in better breeding stock, improved their water management, and began to experiment with new agricultural techniques. Patricia's horse breeding program became renowned throughout the Southwest, and buyers came from as far as California and Texas to purchase her animals. Through it all, their love for each other remained the foundation of everything they built. They still worked side by side when they could, though Marcus had to admit that at 50, he could not do quite as much as he once had. Patricia, too, felt the years, though she remained strong and active. We are getting old, Marcus said one evening, rubbing his sore back after a long day. We are getting older, Patricia corrected. There is a difference. Still as stubborn as the day I met you, you would not want me any other way. No, I would not. In 1895, Douglas Jr. married a young woman named Elizabeth Hayes, the daughter of a neighboring rancher. It was a good match, and Elizabeth proved to be a capable ranch wife who could ride and rope as well as any of the hands. She and Patricia became close, and it was clear that the younger woman admired her mother-in-law greatly. She is not at all what I expected, Elizabeth confessed to Patricia one day. People in town talk about you as if you were some kind of oddity. But you are just a woman who knows her own mind and is not afraid of hard work. That is all I ever tried to be, Patricia said. Douglas and Elizabeth built a house on the ranch, close enough to the main house to be helpful but far enough to have their own space. When their first child was born in 1896, a boy they named Marcus Douglas, Patricia held her grandson and marveled at how life continued its cycles. Clara, meanwhile, showed no interest in marriage. At 20, she was focused entirely on the ranch and particularly on expanding their cattle operation into new markets. You worry about her, Marcus asked Patricia. No, she is happy and fulfilled. If she chooses to marry someday, that is wonderful. If she does not, that is equally fine. I just want her to live the life she chooses. Just like her mother, Marcus said fondly. As the 19th century drew to a close, Marcus and Patricia began to step back from the day-to-day operations of the ranch. Douglas Jr. took over most of the management, with Clara handling the cattle side and Elizabeth managing the horses under Patricia's guidance. Patricia was 50 when she finally admitted that climbing into the saddle was getting harder. My joints are not what they used to be, she told Marcus. We have earned the right to slow down, Marcus replied. He was 53 and feeling his years as well. Let the young people do the hard work. We can supervise. They settled into a new rhythm, advising and guiding rather than doing all the work themselves. They spent more time with their grandchildren, teaching them the skills and values that had served them so well. Young Marcus was joined by a sister, Patricia Rose, and then a brother, Samuel. Clara remained unmarried but seemed perfectly content, pouring her considerable energy into the ranch. In 1902, New Mexico was still a territory, but statehood seemed increasingly likely. The ranch had grown to encompass over 5,000 acres, with 100 horses and 500 head of cattle. They employed 15 ranch hands year-round and more during busy seasons. It was a far cry from the modest operation Marcus had started with 24 years earlier. We built something good, Patricia said one evening. They were sitting on their porch, as they had done thousands of times before, watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and purple. "We did," Marcus agreed, "and it will continue after we are gone. That is all anyone can hope for." "Do you have any regrets?" Marcus considered the question seriously. "I regret that we lost your father so early. I wish he could have seen all of this. I regret the people who were unkind to you, though I am glad you never let them change who you are. But regret marrying you, regret the life we built together. Never, not for a single moment. I feel the same way. When I think about who I was before I met you, that lonely woman convinced she would never have a family of her own, it seems like a different life entirely. You were never going to be lonely for long. Someone would have seen your worth. But I am glad it was you." They sat in comfortable silence, hands intertwined, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. From inside the house, they could hear the sounds of family. Douglas and Elizabeth's children playing, Clara talking with her brother about the next day's work, the ordinary domestic sounds of a life well lived. In 1907, at the age of 56, Patricia finally stopped riding entirely. Her knees had simply had enough of the strain. She still worked with the horses from the ground, still supervised the breeding program, but her days of galloping across the range were over. "I do not feel old," she complained to Marcus. "My body just will not cooperate with what my mind wants to do." "Then we will find new ways for you to do what you love," Marcus said practically. He had his own aches and pains at 60, but was still active on the ranch. They bought a small buggy that Patricia could drive, allowing her to move around the ranch even if she could not ride. She became an even more sought-after consultant on horse breeding, with people coming from across the region to seek her advice. She wrote articles for agricultural journals, sharing her knowledge and methods with others. Clara, at 32, finally shocked everyone by announcing she was getting married. Her intended was a widower named James Mitchell, a rancher from Texas who had come to buy horses and stayed to court Clara. He was 40, practical, and clearly admired Clara's independence and strength. "He reminds me of your father," Patricia told Clara. "He sees you for who you are and loves you for it." "That is why I am marrying him," Clara replied. "I was not going to settle for less." The wedding was a joyful affair, with James moving to New Mexico to merge his operation with theirs. Clara made it clear that she would continue to work on the ranch, and James supported her completely. "Our daughter chose well," Marcus said as they watched Clara and James dance at the reception. "She learned from the best," Patricia replied, squeezing his hand. More grandchildren arrived. Douglas and Elizabeth had 2 more children, and Clara and James had twin daughters in 1909, when Clara was 35. The ranch house was often full of children's laughter, a sound that never failed to make both Marcus and Patricia smile. As they moved into their 60s, Marcus and Patricia spent more time simply enjoying each other's company. They would sit together for hours, talking about the past and the future, sharing memories and making plans for the ranch's continued success. "You remember the day we met?" Marcus asked one afternoon. They were 70 and 67 respectively, both showing their years but still sharp and engaged with life. "You caught me wrestling a steer out of a fence," Patricia said, smiling at the memory. "I was so embarrassed. I was impressed. I knew right then that you were remarkable. You called me perfect for ranch life. I was right. You were perfect for ranch life, perfect for this life we built together, perfect for me." Marcus took her hand, gnarled now with age and arthritis but still strong. "I have loved you every day for 33 years, and I will love you every day I have left." "And I love you," Patricia said. "You gave me a life I never dreamed possible. You made me believe I was enough exactly as I was. That was the greatest gift anyone ever gave me." They celebrated their 35th wedding anniversary in 1914. The whole family gathered for the occasion, 3 generations of Northfields and Mitchells filling the ranch house and spilling out onto the grounds. Someone had calculated that between children, grandchildren, and now one great-grandchild, there were 27 family members present. All this from one chance meeting, Sarah marveled. She was 60 now and had traveled from Lincoln with her own grown children and grandchildren. Not chance, Marcus said. Fate. I was meant to find Patricia and she was meant to find me. In 1917, when Patricia was 71 and Marcus was 74, Marcus's health began to fail. It started with fatigue and shortness of breath, and the doctor diagnosed a weak heart. There was little to be done except rest and hope for the best. Patricia nursed him carefully, adjusting their activities to his new limitations. They could no longer take long walks around the property, but they still sat together on the porch every evening, watching the sunset and talking. "I am not ready to leave you," Marcus said one evening. "Then do not," Patricia replied fiercely. "Stay with me. We have more time yet." And for a while it seemed they might. Marcus stabilized, and though he was weaker than before, he remained present and engaged with the family and the ranch. They celebrated New Mexico's statehood in 1912 with pride, having watched the territory transform over their decades there. The wild frontier of their youth had become a state, modern and forward-looking while still maintaining its rugged character. "We helped build this," Marcus said, surveying the ranch. "Not just our land, but the whole state. We were part of making it what it is. And our children and grandchildren will continue that work," Patricia said. In the summer of 1918, Marcus's heart finally gave out. He died peacefully in his sleep, Patricia beside him as she had been for 40 years of marriage. He was 77 years old and had lived to see his ranch thrive, his children succeed, and his grandchildren and great-grandchildren carry on the legacy he and Patricia had built. The funeral was attended by hundreds of people. Marcus had been respected throughout the region as a fair rancher, an honest businessman, and a devoted family man. But the eulogy that mattered most to Patricia came from their son Douglas, now a man of 43. "My father taught me many things," Douglas said. "How to judge good cattle, how to manage a ranch, how to be honest in my dealings. But the most important thing he taught me was how to love and respect the woman I chose to marry. He showed me every day what a true partnership looked like. He never saw my mother as less than him because she was a woman, and he never saw her as strange because she could do things many women could not. He simply saw her as his equal, his partner, and the love of his life. That is the legacy I am most proud to carry forward." Patricia wept, surrounded by her children and grandchildren, mourning the loss of her partner and the love of her life. But even in her grief, she knew how fortunate she had been. She had been loved completely and unconditionally for who she was. Not everyone could say that. In the years that followed, Patricia continued to be involved with the ranch, though in an increasingly advisory role. At 73, 74, 75, she remained sharp and interested, offering guidance to Douglas and Clara as they ran the operations. She spent time with her grandchildren and great-grandchildren, telling them stories of the old days and passing on the skills she had learned from her own parents. She taught the girls that they could be anything they wanted to be, and the boys that strength came in many forms. "Your grandmother was called Unfeminine," she told her granddaughter Patricia Rose one day when the girl was about 15. "People said I was too strong, too capable, too much. But your grandfather saw me and said I was perfect for ranch life. He loved me for exactly who I was, and that made all the difference. Remember that when you are choosing your own path. Find someone who loves you for who you are, not who they want you to be." In 1925, at the age of 79, Patricia Calloway Northfield passed away peacefully, surrounded by her family. She had lived a long, full life and had seen her ranch grow from a struggling operation to one of the finest in New Mexico. She had raised 2 children who were good, capable people. She had been loved and had loved in return. They buried her next to Marcus on a hill overlooking the ranch with a simple stone that read, Patricia Calloway Northfield, 1856–1925, perfect for ranch life. Beloved wife, mother, grandmother, and rancher. The ranch continued under the management of Douglas and Clara, then their children, and their children after that. The Northfield name became synonymous with quality horses and honest dealing throughout the Southwest. The original house where Marcus and Patricia had started their life together was preserved and maintained, a reminder of the foundation on which everything else had been built. And every generation heard the story of how it all began, with a sturdy woman who was called unfeminine by small-minded people, and a cowboy who saw her clearly and called her perfect. They heard about the love that had built an empire, not through grand gestures but through daily partnership, mutual respect, and the recognition that strength comes in many forms. The Calloway Northfield Ranch stood as a testament to what 2 people could build when they worked together, loved each other completely, and refused to let the world tell them who they should be. It was a legacy of land and livestock, yes, but more importantly, it was a legacy of love, respect, and the courage to be exactly who you were meant to be. And that legacy lived on, generation after generation, in the wide New Mexico sky, the rolling grasslands, and the hearts of all those who carried the Northfield name and the lessons Marcus and Patricia had taught them about work, love, and finding someone who saw you for who you truly were and called you perfect.